Hello, I'm Toycat, and as you'll probably know if you live in a major city anywhere around the world, grocery shopping has gone insane. I recently moved to London, and let me tell you, the shopping experience is so different, and one of the big reasons for this is the huge increase in crime that is happening to all sorts of major western cities, but I want to talk about exactly how it is first, just in case those of you who do also go around a Tesco don't have the same experience that I do, because it is pretty wild sometimes. So first things first, it did all come from an article from Maddie Mooson. I thought it was a really enjoyable one to read because it did perfectly summarize what it's like to go into a store these days, because as you walk down the fresh produce aisle to get to the meat and fish, you'll notice that the salmon fillets you want are locked in a small plastic briefcase as if for a cat to take to work. Okay, that's pretty strange. You know, they lock up the meat with security tags now, which feels really weird, but to be fair, I have been walking down the street multiple times and there's been someone who's like, hey, you wanna buy some steaks? And he's just got 2 plastic bags filled with steaks. Where did he get those steaks from? Was he a reputable meat dealer? I don't know. I would suspect that he hasn't really been following the cold chain all the way through, but in either case, this is one of the reasons why they're locked up. Also, if you want to get olive oil, it's gussied up with a pair of fishnets with the netting's chastity kept intact by a whopping great security tag. Also very relatable. The number of items that you're in a store for now where you see that they're locked up is getting higher and higher every single day, and it makes you question, like, really, who is stealing olive oil, and more importantly, who is buying it? You know, the steak question is already kind of nuts when you think about it, but olive oil, who wants to buy that from a person on the street? A surprising number of people, apparently. Anyway, moving on to the alcohol, you find it behind a pair of brand new glass doors, which require you to press a button and wait 10 seconds till the doors automatically open. And at that point, you realize there's a security guard following you around. By the way, this happens so often to me. Like, I know a lot of people are like, oh yeah, they profile you based on something, but it happens so randomly that I have to imagine they just follow, you know, 1 in every 15 people in the store, just to make people feel like they're being watched all the time when they're being watched sometimes. Let me know what you think that is. Anyway, when you go to pay, you don't pick up your receipt because who does? Exactly. But when you try to leave the store, you're met by a metal barrier that requires you to show your receipt for proof of purchase. And yes, I want to quickly just point this out. This is a thing that I've only encountered this so far in a few Asda's and the Sainsbury's in Whitechapel in particular. But when you go to walk out, it says, just so you know, you need the barcode from your receipt, and you can't leave without it. Without it, just like Tom Hanks in The Terminal, you have to live in the supermarket forever, and this is already quite a hostile thing. Like, Lidl and Aldi used to be the only supermarkets that would lock you in if you hadn't paid, but now Sainsbury's is doing the same thing. Without proof of payment, you cannot get out. In reality, what this means I do is, if there's a staff member nearby, I ask them to open it, but most of the time, I just wait for someone else to pay and I walk through the barriers with them, which makes you realize the whole system is extra, you know, ridiculous, right? The whole system, the moment that I, a legitimate customer, have to do something illegit to get past the security measure, the more I think, why am I even paying for something to begin with? Maybe I'll be marking more of my chocolate croissants down as regular croissants, and that is the actual impact of these. But yeah, the end result of this is obviously that supermarket shopping in London has always been stressful and a little depressing, but now it's switched into insanity. I 100% agree with this, and I'm sure if you live in London too, you might have noticed the same thing happening, but why is it? The easy answer is you say, well, obviously shoplifting. There is a huge spike, 48%, and one co-op was looted 3 times in a day. Here is footage from that co-op if you're curious. You know, a lot of people like to say, like, oh, it's just people stealing because of the cost of living crisis. They've got to, you know, they've got to steal some bread to feed their children with. Are you going to deny these? And it's like, well, you look at this. I don't know. I can't really say that these people are just trying to feed their family necessarily. I don't know if that's why you break into a store and steal items like olive oil, by the way. Yeah, well, like, who can live without olive oil? Or the salmon fillets. I cannot imagine someone living in the world without any of the salmon fillets in their life. But yeah, this is a thing that is happening more and more and more, and the reason that is simplest to put it down to, the reason that these gates need to exist is that some people will attempt to walk out without paying, and this gate, apparently, the data must show, or at least if they were going to spend the money on it, this gate discourages some of those people and makes them want to pay instead. And so Sainsbury's gets the small win of slightly reducing their shoplifting bill, and you know, like, ultimately everything goes on, but every single time one of these measures comes into play, they're actually inconveniencing the end user too. Me having to keep my receipts, really the environment having to deal with all those receipts is going pretty badly on the one hand, but also everyone who wants to buy any of these things in a store now goes through a lot more pain because of a small group of shoplifters. You know, 9.2 million a month actually isn't that much. It sounds pretty bad, like 100 100 million a year is pretty awful, but it's not actually that horrendous, and thankfully the police are, they're attending less than half of shoplifting reports, and really, and you know, they do make a really good point that the Metropolitan Police, the London Police, say it's not realistic for officers to attend every single shoplifting incident, but then at the exact same time, if it's not realistic to attend every single incident, they're just kind of saying, yeah, even if we attend them, we're gonna be there kind of slow, it's not a priority for us, and ultimately, what are we gonna do? They've probably left by the time you stop them shoplifting. It's very hard to know someone is shoplifting before they've walked out of the store, and it's very hard to get the police there within, you know, 12 seconds or whatever you need to do to get them out there. And so yeah, my experience, having, again, been in a Tesco many times, is that oftentimes you do just see someone, it's often with alcohol if I'm being honest. Like, I know I meant the point that people love to say that it's people stealing for their families. I actually do find the most common time I see people stealing is with alcohol. It's like 4 bottles and they're walking out slowly or whatever. One time I saw a security guard ask that he walked out with him and he asked the guy nicely to come back and return the alcohol, and he did. And the other times they just walked away and nothing happened with them, because ultimately, what are you gonna do? As you know, the private security at these stores are not allowed to actually intervene and tackle customers or anything like that, as maybe you wouldn't want them to, but it means that the private security isn't very good, and either is the police, because you know that stat here that they only attend less than half of shoplifting reports. That sounds pretty bad until you realize that, okay, well, how many shoplifting reports are there? Well, there was 4,790 crimes, 159 a day, but experts say around 90% of shoplifting goes unreported because police don't investigate any incident below £200, meaning losses, basically trying to say there that off the 50% that they do attend, that's only about 10% of the overall crimes, and of those, how many actually result in something going well? Basically, you know, the point that many people say is that theft is just legalized up to a certain point. Again, if the man with the many expensive bottles of alcohol can just walk out the store, why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you just say, actually, yeah, why don't I do this as well? What we found is that, an interesting thing here, by the way, is that 100 thefts are not committed by 100 shoplifters, it's about 10. People feel entitlement to steal, and when they are stopped, it's when it gets violence and knives and needles come out. And they know when it's caught on CTV, they're getting a 10-bob sentence. At the moment, shoplifting looks like a good gamble is an interesting way to put it. Whether you agree with that or not, there is a really good underlying point that if you, you know, the way that crimes are, the way people decide whether or not they're going to do something bad, in my experience, is not based 100% on the moral right and wrong, and it's not based on the maximum sentence you'll get in exchange for doing something bad, but instead, there is a calculation people are running, not just what is the punishment for being caught, but what is the likelihood of that occurring to me. So, say for example, as it is, the fine for being caught on the London Underground without a ticket is £80. If you're in a tube station somewhere and you don't have your ticket, let's hope this is a tube station and not the Cafe Nero. You know, if you're in a tube station, as I definitely am right now, and you don't have a ticket, then that is an £80 fine. But the number, it costs about £3 for a journey, and the number of journeys where you get asked for a ticket are so few. And so if it was easy to get on and off the tube, a lot of people would choose not to pay. And so stations where they don't have ticket barriers, or stations where it's permanently left open. I've been to Peckham Rye recently quite a few times, and you know, it sucks that you can't get Street View inside of train stations, but the barriers there, someone has always permanently like left one open, and it's like, yeah, there is a free travel lane if you feel like doing it, but this is something that everyone is making the calculation of every single day, because, you know, ultimately, even though I'm not the sort of person to say, well, the cost of living is the reason this is happening and people have got to do that, a lot of people do say, yeah, if I could commit a crime and then I'd have more nice things myself, that would be great. If I could steal some steaks from the store, again, I really cannot stress enough how many times this has happened, not just to me, but also to people I've heard. I know it's something that seems ridiculous, because who is buying the steaks from the man? People actually are. So yeah, there are two angles you can take on this one. One is to say either the police need to do something, or the businesses just need to say, okay, we're going to accept shoplifting. When you look at the amount of profit, you know, the total shoplifting loss for all of the stores is 9.2 million a month, about 100 million a year. But the total profits for Tesco in a bad year are 882 million, and in a good year are 2.3 billion. It has to be said, for some reason, people report on this all the time without mentioning, that is a 3% profit margin. It is a razor thin margin, but as a total number, 2.3 billion, you know, if we're going to measure by margin, shoplifting is still a relatively small margin. It's still something like only 1 in 1,000 £1,000 that goes through a store is stolen, and so you could just say, swallow it up. Except that's never what a business is going to do. Either because, the business's interests is in, you could argue that the business has an interest in making money, and so they're always going to put making money over a good experience if they can do both at the same time. But ultimately, also, it's because, there is the crucial point of, well, if they have the data that these people aren't customers, why would they make life good for them? And there's kind of a thing of like, if they can take it out on the end customer, that makes a few more people be against stealing, and so maybe it works out for them on that level too. So you could say this is the problem, that like, okay, stores need to accept the loss, or we need to get good at stopping it, or we're gonna get dumb measures like this. And one of my favorite dumb things, by the way, is the screens on the, to hide the freezer stuff from you, the ads on there. But the whole separate point for another time. Like, grocery shopping is a little dystopian in some places because you can't see in the fridge without opening the doors. But another interesting thing, and they use this to target promotions at you and all that stuff, but another interesting thing beyond just this is the fact that you could say, actually, no. Even though there is some fault on the people stealing, and there is some fault on the police and some fault on the companies, I actually go a different angle at this, and you can hate me for this all you like, but the fact that people steal salmon fillets by a ridiculous number, the fact that there are olive oil thefts that are being done, according to this article right here, in the wheelie bin or the luggage full, the fact that people feel brazen enough to steal these things means they're not stocking up on olive oil for the next 12 years of their life. I think I might respect that if that was the plan, but actually their plan is to resell it to other people. I feel like a lot of convenience stores go through with this. A lot of convenience stores are like, yeah, people do just come in here with stolen goods, but also at the exact same time, there are people who are buying from these dodgy people. You go on a Facebook group and you see 50% off your olive oil, or 50% off those steaks, or 50% off, some laundry detergent is, I think, the most famous example of this, Tide in the United States. I think people try to steal that because people love to buy it. But if you keep buying stolen goods, you are encouraging people to steal from the stores. When you encourage people to steal from the stores, you encourage this to happen. And so you could argue that really that's the flaw in it. And I think that actually is true. I think that as a society, we should not be down to buy stolen property. When you buy stolen items, you are, in fact, hurting, when you increase the demand for stolen items, you're going to have a lot of people rapidly try to meet the supply. It's a supply and demand is a basic thing. And so if you don't want people going into your Sainsbury's and stealing your olive oil, or maybe if you do, but where are we right now? Here we are. So if you don't want people walking into your Sainsbury's, this is the one I'm talking about, by the way. If you want to see something wild, I was trying to look up the exact Sainsbury's I was talking about, and if you go on Google Maps, you can see something really strange, which is the fact that this Sainsbury's used to have a multi-story car park, and then they got rid of the okay, so here, that's what it was like before. Here's what it's like on Google Maps, big multi-story, and then they got rid of the multi-story car park, and they ended up with oh wait, where are we now? I'm in a different street all of a sudden. But they got rid of the multi-story car park, and they instead ended up with a... I was just there. It's a very confusing place to try and find. But what is happening here? But anyway, it changed into a single-story car park, which I think is weird. You'd expect the opposite to be more common in London. Maybe I'm wrong there. But also what I find to be very interesting is the fact that inside of this Sainsbury's, you get all sorts of dumb security measures, because clearly people who are, I don't know who, I don't know where, I don't know how, but I know a lot of people are very excited for their half-price goods, but what you're actually encouraging is the full-price goods get more expensive for everyone. And there's a wider societal point on that, I think, that is to say, is that when we take advantage of things that are provided for us, when we take advantage of the public realm, things we all pay for effectively, which is sort of what you're doing with the private businesses of stores, you'll see those stores close in some cases, or in other cases, if they still want to keep their, their money in whatever way, they're going to make it as theft resistant as possible. That can mean hiring more security guards, but ultimately they can't stop people. So what it actually means is putting fishnets on the olive oil. What it actually means is glass doors stores that don't open for 10 seconds because thieves aren't willing to wait that long. And what it actually means are these dumb ticket gates that make me so mad. And the same thing is true for lots of other things. So public toilets are a normal thing in lots of cities, except in cities where there is a large population of people who go in there and maybe abuse them to do either drugs or just, go in there and treat them poorly. Those public toilets go away and you have to be a customer to start using them. Or maybe they just, businesses don't have them whatsoever. It is a real pain in certain areas of central London to find a toilet to use, which is a problem because, sure, we all need to use the toilet sometimes, but there are particular groups of people that need to use it more than others, and the same is kind of true for a store. I feel like this is the most basic thing that everyone needs in their life, and sure, getting half of olive oil now might be good, but just why are you buying the stolen olive oil to begin with? That's my that is my take from this. We should blame the companies for installing these, but then we should really be blaming the police for making it so bad that they need to install these, but then we should really be blaming the people that allow there to be a market for stolen goods to begin with, because, stealing pick and mix here or there maybe is less bad than stealing hundreds and hundreds of bottles of some things, or maybe that's just my bias, because when I was 6, I stole a chocolate football ball from the pick and mix section, and I spent the next, 3 months of my life being terrified. Every time I heard sirens, I was like, they found me, they worked it out, I'm gonna have to give myself up, I've got a hard life in prison ahead of me. Maybe that's the reason I think stealing chocolate balls is okay, or maybe that was just the first moment in my life where I realized that the only reason you shouldn't steal is because you think it's wrong, and enough people in the world do not agree with that assessment, and that is a funny problem to have. Or maybe it's not funny, maybe it's actually sad. Should I go to another Sainsbury's? I feel like it's really interesting seeing stores in London. They're always in such bizarre, locations. So if we go to, I want to say, whenever you find a big store in London, it's always a really, really odd one. So one of the nicer examples, if you go to the Waitrose in Canary Wharf, it's 2 floors below the street level. It feels really, really weird to get to. Wait, Canary Wharf doesn't have street view? I know it's private land, but I'm still... That is shocking to see. Okay, well, there's a fun fact for you. You can't see street view around Canary Wharf right now. But yeah, as a result, here is what you'll see instead of the store. Look how lovely it looks. Speaking of things that look lovely, you're looking wonderful today. Thank you for showing up to this video. I can see you're positively glowing, and I hope that you continue to watch these, because I'm gonna play, I'm finally gonna do OSRS guesses soon. It's gonna be great. I'll see you next week for that. Also, I'm traveling to a new country soon. It's gonna be great. I'm excited. I've been at 51 for so long, but I'm gonna hit 52 in just a short couple of weeks. It's gonna be wonderful. Look forward to seeing you there soon. Bye. Oh, give me money on Patreon so I can buy olive oil and salmon. Thanks. Or maybe I should just buy it from the... If you give me half as much money, I could buy it from some dodgy person who didn't go through these gates, maybe. Yeah, I think I'll just do that instead.